Everything we do is going to be about winning. Okay, we're going to learn to do things the right way, and that's the only way we're going to do them. Because if it doesn't help us, we're not doing it, man. That's just as simple as it gets. Win the Super Bowl.
That's
I
good.
mean it too. You know, one of the things that the only reason you become a head coach in this league, in my opinion, is to win. That's it. That's the bottom line. If you do it for any other reason, you're wrong.
Hey, football fans. Welcome to the Washington Command Center. All right, so 2 from Taylor gives us 3 wins in a row and a new hope for the season. And I know this is right at the buzzer with the trade deadline tomorrow at 4, but if we want to give it our best shot, it would be in our best interest to seek some upgrades before the trade deadline. Maybe grab a piece that could, push us over the top in this crazy turnaround that could lead to the postseason. At the very least, we could secure a piece or two to improve this team in this new era of Washington football, an era where this proud franchise can once again command respect. And what better way to kick off this new era than subscribing here to the first, the real, the OG Washington Command Center, so you can find your way back to some of the most opinionated and ice-cold calculated takes on all things Washington Commanders. While you're at it, ring that bell, hit that like button. It's free to do, and it means a lot. Okay, with a lot of fans getting their wish with Carson heading to the IR, and the savior, Taylor Heinicke, coming back and securing a win over his childhood favorite Green Bay Packers, and then the Colts, there's some reason for excitement. Aaron Rodgers aside, we've gutted out some close wins against 3 not-so-good teams. And while Taylor's wheels, at the very least, have breathed a bit of new life into this season, we're going to need some help if we plan on doing more than just messing up our draft pick. With Carson on the IR, we have the ability now to secure our second rounder, keep him out for at least 6 weeks so we don't lose that. And with the 3rd round comp pick on the way for Sheriff, alongside with a 7th that we have on the way for Settle, we have sufficient ammo to make some moves and possibly make something out of this season. Or snatch up some players that would be less of a gamble than the rookies, in the rounds that we'd be trading away anyway. So I think we should definitely be buyers right now before the trade deadline. I know I'm cutting it really close, putting this out, the night before the trade deadline. But, hey, they got all day tomorrow to hear this, make some phone calls, and get us some guys in here. First off, let's look at some big-ticket items. These wouldn't necessarily be my picks, but there are a couple of, big move, sure thing type players that come with the price tags to match. They will be upgrades to this team, possibly in a big way, but they might take some rich picks, and not to mention some rich contracts coming along with them. Starting out up in New England with former first round Georgia Bulldog offensive tackle Isaiah WYNN. He's 6'2", 310, 26 years old. Outside of the big problem being his desire to start at left tackle, and, he's going to make left tackle money after this season. He's in his 5th-year option, which is a shame because even with his ability and his high-tier performance he's given at left tackle, this guy's body is far better suited to be playing offensive guard right where we would need him. And sure, some musical chairs could be played along with our offensive line to fit in what would definitely be an upgrade with Isaiah Wynn. He's a risky season rental with an injury history, and, which would luckily bring his asking price down considerably. But I don't know if the juice would be worth the squeeze, especially with a player, we'd need to re-sign next year. It would be a shame to bring in, the kind of pieces that would make this the type of offense that Wentz could throw for 6,000 yards behind, only to make Wentz and some other players cap casualties when we start paying real left tackle money instead of the sweetheart deal we got Leno for. So with all that considered, if he's in the neighborhood of like a 4th round pick because of all the variables, the injuries, the price tag that's going to come with him, if he's around there, then he's definitely worth negotiating with. If New England wants something in that ballpark, and if we can meet some kind of agreement with Wynn on an extension or a position change, then I say full speed ahead. Even though I think there are some better all-around options. After New England, you got the Texans, who are always in sell mode. And I think that they're in a similar situation money-wise. Except the contracts is already in place with this player. And, he's a for sure left tackle in Laramie Tunsil. That's a guy that I would think would be the no-brainer target. He would give us a massive upgrade, but would mean heavily shuffling the offensive line with Leno possibly to right tackle, Cosme to right guard. But in my opinion, I think he's way too expensive in every way. I think his contract is too expensive. And the pick, he'd probably demand a high pick even with that contract. So, looking at the Texans, Laramie Tunsil wasn't necessarily the guy I had in mind. We're the only team dumb enough to dish out a franchise left tackle for anything less than a 2nd round pick. But this time, we could hope to be the 49ers on that side of the Trent Williams trade. Who knows? But other than Tunsil, I think the more manageable trade target would be former 1st round pick TYTUS Howard. He's 6'5", 322 pounds. He's only 26 years old. The Texans exercised his 5th year option, so we'd have him locked in for next year. But he's still so-so. Now, we've seen improvement since his move to guard, and hopefully that would continue here. But that 5th year option jumps him up to $13 million, which is a really hard sell, especially since we don't know if he'll continue to improve at guard here. If Ron and the guys check him out and think he can, his contract, and his slow start to his career as a Texan, or in his career, and then the Texans' trade attitude, we could end up with a decent price. He could end up coming in the fifth round pick type region, so maybe that would be worth it. But TYTUS Howard would definitely be a guy I would look more to than Laramie Tunsil because the price tag difference. After the Texans, let's give a call to Ron's old team and actually try to get a quality player from them before they hit the scrap heap. The Matt Rule firing, the CMC and Robbie Anderson trades, and every other sign out there points to the Panthers are blowing it up, and this should be approached as an everything must go sale. They cashed out on most of their offensive weapons, so they should definitely be on the call list. The big prize would be reuniting Ron and John Masco with 2017 second round pick right tackle Taylor Moton. 6'5", 325 pounds. He's 28 years old, but he's in his prime, unlike Ron's other 28-year-old former Panther, Trey Turner. Moton is still at the top of his game and can be a huge upgrade to our line. Bringing him in at right tackle would let us move Cosme to right guard, like many people want to see anyway, and also strengthen up our depth by letting Lucas go back to swinging. The biggest problem with Moton is the contract that comes with him. $24 million a year for the next 3 years at right tackle. Sorry, that's a no for me, dog. That's almost twice what we are paying Leno to play left tackle. So, not really in on the Taylor Moton deal. Maybe if the pick is late enough and Carolina is just trying to dump the contract, maybe, they think he's outside the age group that, they're trying to move ahead with in a rebuild, and they're just trying to get rid of that contract. And maybe if we could come to an agreement, Ron being the guy that drafted him, to restructure the deal, then fine. But those are some big ifs, but it's still worth exploring. On the opposite end of the spectrum, on a cheap 1-year rental for them, former 6th-round pick center Bradley Bozeman from the Ravens previously, 6'5", 325 pounds. He's also 28 years old. Former center from Bama. This guy's definitely worth a day 3 pick. He's gotten better every season, and he seems to be coming into his peak. He was a 73.6 PFF grade last year after starting the whole season. And in his first start this season, he came out the gate with an elite grade of a 93.2. Now, I don't think we can count on that level for sure. But anyway, anywhere between the 73.6 that he averaged out last year and the 93 type play that he's put out so far this year is pretty close, if not better, than what we were getting from Roulier on average. So we could end up with Roulier's replacement for little to nothing. I mean, it seems like a great idea to me. So Bradley Bozeman would definitely be a guy that, I made a call about. So at Carolina, on the other side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, they got another player I'm interested in here. And since we're trying to move William Jackson III, I figure why not ask them about, another young cornerback they have that could possibly help us out. We got Benjamin St. Juste and Wild Goose really stepping up and, making us not miss William Jackson III at all. Let's grab another young, high-potential player to possibly take over for Fuller and possibly, help us out. And Carolina's got just the guy. They're not making any use of the guy right now, and that's cornerback C.J. Henderson. He was a former top 10 pick in 2020, and they stole him last year for Dan Arnold in a 5th-round pick. Henderson still has another season and a 5th-year option on his rookie contract. He flashed as a rookie in Jacksonville, then he got hurt, and he was shipped to Carolina, where he was outshined and backseated by Carolina's own first-round cornerback, J.C. Horn. They're really not using this guy at all, and he hasn't done anything to improve his stock. So I think, honestly, we could probably get him for a 6th or 7th round pick at this point. Going into his 4th season of his contract, he's going to actually take a little step up in money, still be cheaper than Fuller, still be cheaper than William Jackson III, but might be more than Carolina's willing to pay a guy that's not doing anything. so they could get something for him here. It's not like a bunch of teams are going to be after him. Yeah, I definitely think he fits our team a bit better. And judging by the improvements that Ben St. Juste has made, along with Wild Goose, who's looking better each week, I think we could actually get some of his potential, some of the potential he had coming out as a top 10 pick out of him. So I would love, especially for the price that he'll probably go at, to trade for C.J. Henderson. Now, another team, another cornerback, Seattle is rumored to be willing to part with 26-year-old former second-round pick to the Eagles, Sidney Jones. He's a younger player, not seeing the field these days, but he's considerably improved in his last 2 seasons after leaving Philly, and he previously showed off some ball hawk skills. Now, they haven't, made themselves shown lately, but I think with our pass rush, we could get that back out of him. He's a much better fit to our defense than William Jackson III was, and at this point, he'd just be a 1-year rental, so he's definitely going to be cheap. We could definitely get him for less than we're hopefully going to get back for William Jackson III. So, would definitely be a good addition. Then the last cornerback out there that might be available that also fits our defense is New York Jets' Bryce Hall. He's 25 years old. He's a former 5th-round pick and former Virginia Cavalier. Again, we'll probably get him for less than we get for William Jackson III, if not the same. And this guy could be a legitimate upgrade for the team. That would give us cap room. I feel like he could he's a younger player, better fit for the defense. He could step into Kendall Fuller's role and give us better, not even similar. I think he'd give us better than what we're getting from Kendall Fuller right now. So, and he still has the potential to improve even more as we go along. So I think Bryce Hall would be a very smart target. And definitely we should call the Jets and check it out. I didn't prepare anything about it, but hey, not for this season, but for next season, Mekhi Becton too. I've heard that they've wanted to move on from him. I'd be willing to throw something their way for him, even with his injuries. Local guy, freak athlete. Love to bring him in if the price was right. Now, on to another team. I was originally going to recommend asking the Cardinals about their third-round offensive lineman, Josh Jones. But injuries have him in a starting role right now where he's performing pretty well. So I don't think they'd be willing to part with him, but there have been rumors that they'd be willing to move on from former first-round linebacker Isaiah Simmons. 6'4", 240 pounds. He's a 9.97 RAS at linebacker, a perfect 10 RAS at safety, where I think he kind of fit much better. As a nickel player, which is basically a safety. I think he'd fit better there, and he'd massively upgrade us in coverage ability there, while still having the size and strength to play that outside linebacker role. So you don't even have to change the personnel on the field to change your scheme. So great upgrade there. Now the Cardinals are playing a bit more nickel, and you're getting to see him take a step up with that. So I'd feel confident bringing him here and putting him into that. Now, he's about to hit the part of his contract where he's actually making some real money. So those rumors that they're open to trade, are probably at their most true now. No time like the present. Make sure you don't have to pay him that money. They're already a little jaded on him. We're not. I think he would fit well here. This week, we got to look at the defense with Cam Curl having the green dot, which, I recommended it in the past. So if we could bring in another physical freak like Simmons, I think that could be a massive boost to our defense. One freak like Jamin Davis that is geared far more towards using his gifts to come downhill and explode the run game and blitz with a freak like Simmons coming from the safety role in college where he's far better suited at coverage. But he also has that Mach 5 missile ability when blitzing. Adding those two to the linebacker group would be awesome. And keeping that green dot on Cam and moving him back to strong safety from the nickel gives him an even better look at the field to read and get everybody in place. Some of these guys like Jamin and Simmons that have, things have come in a little slower to them. So you let Cam just call the shots from back there and just let these guys go off. And adding Simmons would boost the second level of our defense far closer to what we have on our D-line. That freaky D-line we have. I think Simmons would be like adding the Montez Sweat of the linebacker group to Jamin Davis's Chase Young. That speed, that length, all that. Whereas Jamin Davis is just that raw, downhill, strong Chase Young type. So we get that kind of boost to our second level. And as far as price, a first rounder is out of the question. I think he's performed himself out of them ever thinking they could get a first round for him. And with 2.5 years of his rookie contract gone, the performance, dropping his stock, a second round is probably a stretch. Like, I don't know if they could be asking for a second, with his rookie contract putting him, into that, the money as a top 10 pick for his rookie contract at this point. He's getting closer to proven mid-tier solid linebacker money next year. And then the 5th-year option will be more on the lines of, near Pro Bowl level guys. So I think that's weaker, leverage for the Cardinals. But honestly, with how he'd fit our defense and how it would let us upgrade pretty much everywhere just by letting Cam and Defoe move back to strong safety and free safety, not having to worry about them at nickel, having a freak athlete in that position, giving us that crazy, 3 safeties there that could kind of all rotate, but he's also a linebacker too, so we could keep the personnel the same there. It could do crazy things for the defense. So I would be willing to give up that second round pick for him. I think a second round pick would be worth it. But more likely, he'd be like a 3rd and a future 6th or something like that. Well, in which case, I would jump on that in a heartbeat. But, let's just say, even if he's a second round pick, I think he'd be worth it. Now, another option would be reaching out to our Beltway neighbors in the Baltimore Ravens and checking on a pair of their backups. They got 2019 undrafted free agent Patrick Mekari, who's 6'4", 305 pounds. He's only 25 years old, and he's held his own at center. He's looked great at right tackle, where he played the majority of last season. And this season, he's looked even better in limited snaps at guard, where we would need him, which I believe will be his most natural position because of his size. He's agile, he's got good feet, he's got strength, and that agility lets him stay in front of, guys in pass pro, even with Lamar running all over the place behind him, at times holding on to the ball forever. Mekari's still able to mirror guys, stay in front of them, keep them off of him, and those same attributes help him out in run blocking too. I think he could be a really nice addition. And again, I don't think they'd be asking for anything crazy because he's a backup and he's a UDFA anyway. Basically, anything they get for him is a profit. I know some teams can be attached to those diamonds in the rough that they found, but he's got 2 more seasons on his contract. And for a guy that could end up being a starter for us, the $6 million he's going to be making is a bargain. I would be willing to give an early day 3 pick for him. And I don't think the Ravens could possibly be asking for more than that. Now, if they won't part with their more proven Mekari, I think we should inquire about second year, third round pick, former Georgia Bulldog, and Game of Thrones mountain stunt double, Ben Cleveland. He's 6'6", 370 pounds, super impressive 9.63 RAS score. Now, he was middling in limited snaps as a rookie, and he hasn't taken any offensive snaps this season, but he showed enough promise as a rookie, along with his physical gifts, to think that he could give us a real presence at guard that would improve our pass pro and our run blocking considerably. It's not going to be easy for guys to get past this guy. And he can get the kind of push that we just aren't getting at the guard level. He's about the ideal lump of clay to hand over to John Matsko. And in my opinion, he has the tools that he could coast along on his physical gifts while improving our line. Just coast along on those gifts, still making our line better while his technique catches up to him. And once again, even if we have to reimburse them, give them back a third round pick for the final 2 years of his rookie deal, I think it would be worth it in the situation we're in. But with how he's played so far and the fact he's not playing now, I honestly think he'd be cheaper than that. They'd be willing to come off of him for a fourth or maybe even a fifth if we got lucky. Wouldn't hurt to ask. Outside of the offensive line pieces that we desperately need if we want to continue our newfound winning ways and possibly make something out of this season, since we'd be on the phone with Baltimore anyway, and since they just traded for a shiny new toy at linebacker and Roquan Smith, we might as well see what they want for Patrick Queen. He's 6'3", 237 pounds, former first-round pick back in 2020, a lot like Isaiah Simmons. He's got another season and a fifth-year option after this season. And also, like Simmons, he has not performed anywhere near his draft position. But he has taken a decent step forward with their defense, switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3 nickel type like ours. Like Simmons has, too. They've both taken a step forward with that transition. And with Jamin Davis's strides this season, my confidence is a little higher in our ability to develop linebackers. You know, Jack Del Rio himself having a hand in elevating Ravens linebackers in the past as the linebacker coach for that legendary 2000 Raven defense that was brimming with stud linebackers. So I'd feel confident trading for him. And at this point, Queen's value has definitely taken a hit, which would be great for us. Plus, that linebacker spot, they just traded to replace him. They got a brand new Pro Bowl caliber player in Roquan Smith. And they also have a first rounder from this draft in Kyle Hamilton, who's having his best production in the box anyway. So they might want to look to move him down the linebacker as well. You know, next season and the fifth-year option will mean that Queen's also taking a step up in pay as a first rounder, and this would be as good a time as any to shoot a shot for another former first rounder. You know, just so the Ravens can get something back for him and save some money. They're going to need it with Roquan and what he's going to want. So we could probably get him just to clear their books and to open a spot for another young talent. We'll get a chance to improve one of our weaker groups on the defense. We get 2 years to take him for a spin at a reasonable price for what would be in the neighborhood of, I imagine, a 3rd round pick at the worst. Now, honestly, I think he's got less potential than Simmons. So he should be, cheaper than that. But he would still be an upgrade with enough potential to end up as a solid upgrade at linebacker for us. And a better linebacker, or a better bet at linebacker than what we could land at that point in the draft. In the 3rd, 4th round, I feel more confident taking Patrick Queen and trying to get his potential out of him than trying to pick a name out of a hat in the 3rd or 4th round. After them, possibly the toughest of all trades to pull off that I'll be recommending here, but probably cheaper. Before I get to my final 2 top recommendations, I want to talk about a long shot in-division trade with the Eagles. The Eagles are cruising along. They're on top of the world, undefeated. So maybe they'd possibly be willing to part with their scraps and back up offensive tackles. Either Andrew Dillard, 6'5", 315-pound, former 1st-round pick. He's a great athlete. He had a 9.81 RAS coming out. Now the Eagles have declined his 5th-year option, so he'd be a rental just for the rest of the season, and probably a cheap one. But a transition to guard like we did with another division rival's former 1st-round pick, Eric Flowers, could be just as successful. We could get him and move him to offensive guard, where I think Dillard's better suited anyway. And that trade gets our foot in the door for a cheap re-sign if he works out. If not, I'm sure he'll be cheap enough that as a trade that it won't hurt us too bad. I think it's a chance to bolster our offensive line that's in dire need this season. And we could bring him in. The Eagles can't be asking much. Even if they tax us for an in-division trade, it would be a 6th-rounder or worse for the type of money he's making and his previous injuries and performances. I think we could get better out of him at guard, so I'd be willing to ask for it. But if not Dillard, then definitely Jack Driscoll would be worth asking about. 6'5", 315 pounds. He was a 4th-round pick in the 2020 draft, and he should be just as cheap. And he offers a couple more seasons on his rookie deal. And he was a pretty good athlete, too, at a 8.83 RS score. Driscoll's best football came last season, his 2nd in the league, where he was playing at right guard through 9 games. He had a 70 PFF grade and only allowed 1 sack and had 1 penalty. So, as a former 4th-rounder and a backup, that's pretty good, shows a lot of promise, and he should be cheap. He should be in that 5th, 6th-round ballpark. Definitely worth picking up the phone and calling. They probably won't want to help us here before they have to play us again, but it's worth a shot. Some quality players that could really help us out. Finally, to the last 2 teams, and outside of Isaiah Simmons or possibly cheap trades for Bryce Hall or Sidney Jones, these are far and away my top recommendations. First off, my tippy top recommendation. Hitting up the Bears and asking for Tevin Jenkins. Now he's an offensive guard, 6'6", 321 pounds. He's only 24 years old. He was a 2021 2nd-round pick, 39th overall. He had a 92.0 92.0 overall PFF grade before the draft, and he's currently grading at a 77 overall PFF grade this season. He moved from offensive tackle to right guard, and he's a monster. Now, he dealt with a back injury in his rookie season and was moved to right guard where he has blossomed, in my opinion. But he has had issues with the coaches, and that's why there were the trade rumors before the season even started. Now, the Bears are definitely in sell mode. And even though he could be like a young foundational piece that, would be nice to seemingly move forward with, they seem open to move. They seem open to trade him. There has been that talk. So this is my number one guy that I would target. As I said before the draft, I thought this guy was the perfect Brandon Sheriff replacement in 2021. And his transition so far has solidified that even more. He was a second-round pick last year, having that back injury, having the locker room issues and everything else. I think this guy could be a third-round trade value, which would be a steal, in my opinion, for a guy that is trending towards being a future top 10 offensive guard, in my opinion. Even if we had to reimburse Chicago with a second-round pick, it would be worth it, in my opinion, to secure that Brandon Sheriff replacement. We're seeing how bad we need him now. We could secure that replacement with a couple years left on his rookie deal and the fifth-year option. Or no, he doesn't have a fifth-year option. I'm sorry. With a couple years left on his contract, it's a no-brainer. You get, I'm sure, what could be Brandon Sheriff caliber play on a rookie deal. We should have made this call weeks ago. Maybe they did. They just didn't want to do it before they played us or something. But we should be calling them up for this guy. Like I said, even if we had to do the second round pick, I would still probably do it. But with everything that happens, this guy has got to be right there in that third round range. Like, they can't be asking for much more than that. I'd offer him a third and like a future fifth or something, or a third and one of our sevenths. But I would be trying to get this guy. I'd be bending over backwards to try to get Tevin Jenkins on this team. It would completely change everything. After that, the last pick there, I would hit up the Falcons for center Matt Hennessy. 6'3", 307 pounds. He's 24 years old. He was a third-round pick in the 2020 draft, and he had an 87.7 PFF grade going into the draft. He had a rough rookie season, but he's stepped up since then, and he's played really well. Last season, he ended up with a 77.1 PFF grade on the year, but Drew Dahlman has stepped in and usurped him on the depth chart. Pushed him down. Now Dahlman starting. And the Falcons are a team in need of a lot of help in different places. But their offensive line has come together well, and they've shown their willingness to move players already. They traded Matt Ryan away. They traded Deion Jones this season. So I don't see why they wouldn't be willing to move on from a backup center. Like, that should be perfectly reasonable. With Roulier having back-to-back season-ending injuries, it would be a smart move to snap up an already serviceable young center to replace him. And one that has the potential to even surpass Chase's ability. I mean, he's already putting out a 77 graded type season. Like, already. So, he's only going to get better. He's cheaper. He's still on the rookie contract for 2 more seasons. And that'd be another great way to get more cap space. Trade that pick away. Let Chase Roulier go. Or try to trade him, even though he's injured. Try to get something for him. And get cheaper. and get a more dependable player. I mean, at his highest, third round reimbursement. I don't think that's going to happen. Far more likely he could be had for an early day 3 pick, which in my opinion would be another steal. And honestly, I would be massively in favor of trading for Jenkins and Hennessy. And with their youth and the flashes they've already shown, I'd be willing to set out of the draft on day 2. I'd be willing to set out and send our second rounder and third rounder, our third round comp pick, if we had to, for them. Honestly, if we could line up quite a few of these deals, I would be in full favor of going completely crazy and making the most massive deadline trade move ever. I would be completely with it, shipping out our second for Simmons, our third for Jenkins, our fourth for Hennessy, our fifth for Bryce Hall, and our sixth for CJ Henderson. I would be totally fine going into the next draft with only our first and 2 7th round picks, plus whatever we can net for William Jackson III, or Chase Roullier, or Kendall Fuller, if we can make this happen. If it meant landing the proven upgrades to our interior offensive line, along with having 3 top 10 picks from the 2020 draft, adding, those 2 more first rounders with Simmons and CJ Henderson, I'd be all for it. We'd still have at least 1 more season of rookie contract for all of them. And I think all these players would see a step up, would give a step up to our offense or defense. I think they would get better within our offense or our defense. And while the length of the contract could be seen as a downside in some cases, in some of the shorter length contracts, we know that most players give their absolute best on contract years. Let them be here for those. Plus, these high pick guys would feel that extra motivation from being moved on from. So we'd get that little bit of extra, I'll show them play out of these guys. And, you're going to play harder for somebody that believes in you and trades for you. And I know that would be a lot of new faces, bringing in 5 new players in the middle of the season, but I think it would be worth it. And these guys are all proven enough or have high enough potential that most of these guys could plug right into similar roles in our team, or even better fitting roles. Just like, young John Ridgway was a rookie. Wild Goose was a second-year player. Both of them came right in first week, played meaningful snaps. And they've worked in even bigger roles in this new era of Washington football, an era where this proud franchise can once again command respect. And there's no better way to kick off this new era than subscribing here to the Washington Command Center, so you can find your way back to some of the most opinionated and ice-cold calculated takes on all things Washington Commanders. Hit that like button, subscribe. And I usually don't ask for it, but go ahead and share this one out. So hopefully this might find its way to someone on the team's ears and possibly give them a nudge to make a move right before the buzzer tomorrow, so we can make a bigger impact on this season. If not, if you listen this long, I love y'all. Peace.